All right, welcome back. We are COMP123 in the summer 2020 semester, and it's week 12, part 2 of our broadcast. We're going to be talking about test-driven development today a little bit. So last we left off, before we get to that, I was running a project here, which looks kind of like this. We have this, and this project that we covered last day, and the project that we covered last week, right? Basically takes care of all the requirements that you're going to need for your assignment number 5. Okay, I think you've got everything you need now. I've given you some examples, enough samples that you should be able to do assignment number 5 with a fair degree of certainty. However, one of the things we haven't covered today, which if we can get around to it, is this part, which is what happens when I select something in my data grid view. How do I show it? How do I see what's selected? How do I select the whole thing? How do I do those things? I mean, again, you can infer how to do this by the things we've already done. So if I go back to my design, and again, I'm just trying to help you with your assignment so that it's fairly clear on what you have to do. So if you go to DB view, you have your cells here, right? So one thing to note is from an event perspective, right now we have cell content click, right? So that is one of the events that we have, right? And when I select a cell, whatever that cell is, that's one of the options that I could use. There's also, so cell content click, right? There's also row enter, row header, row leave. There's a bunch of them, right? So, depending on which one I want to cover, right? So look like, if you notice there's row context menu strip
Hello?
changed. Yeah.
We can't hear you, Professor.
Yes. Thank you for that. I was muted. Thank you. So I was saying last day, and I guess I'm recording this at the same time. Appreciate that. I said that we covered most of what you need for assignment 5. Thank you for that. You've got from last week and this week everything that you need, but the one thing we haven't covered is how to select a row, because one of the things I've asked you to do in your assignment is when I select a row, what happens? So what I'm looking for here is in my data grid view inside of the DB view form, then how do I select the entire form, right? So if you notice, or the entire row. So notice it says rows added, rows removed, row state changed, unshared, validated, and all this stuff. So there isn't really a thing particularly with the row, right? Row enter, definitely. If I enter the row, that means like if I put my mouse in there, row height changed. If I try and modify stuff, the header changed or whatever. So that's one of the things that we can definitely do. Resize, but there isn't anything like that to put things in. And this is how you would kind of code if we did any kind of adjustments to the row. Then what you would do is if I change the row, then what you would do is you can update your database based on what the row is. We're not doing the update database part. That's not required because this is not a database course and it's kind of an intro into UI. So we're not doing that. The other one is columns. So you can see that again, I can do column added, different kinds of column events for this thing, but there really isn't a column clicked, right? Or anything like that. But there is a cell content click. There is that, okay? A cell content click. There's also a cell click. So there's two types, cell click and cell content click. So what's the difference between one and the other? Well, if I run this thing for a second, if I click on the cell, anywhere on the cell, so let's say, for example, I click here, I'm actually activating the cell click. If I click here on the actual content, that's cell content click. Those are two different things. And I want you to be able to click anywhere in the cell, like here, as an example, and then it'll generate the event that's going to select the entire cell and so on that I've talked about before. All right, so let's do that first, and then we'll get into test-driven development after this. So cell content click is what we want, not cell click. Be careful. cell click we want, but not cell content click. If you do cell content click, it'll click the actual content, not the cell itself. So let's do this one. When I click the cell itself, cell click, right? Then can I get the context data grid view selected cell? Is that possible? So let's see if I can do that. So if I go context data grid view and I want to start typing selected, all right? So notice that it gives me selected rows, selected, because I can select more than one row, right? Selected rows is what I want, right? So the row that I'm selecting is important because whatever that row is the data that I want. Now there's only gonna be one row, and to stop me from having more than one row selected, because it's which row, I can select multiple rows by control left clicking, right? So if I just comment this out for 1 sec, and if I was to run this program again, the way the data grid view works, it's important for I know how to do that. I can control left click multiple parts of cells. I can do that the way I have the data grid view configured right now. We don't want this, right? So what we need to do is in my DB view form, if I click here on the DB view, and if I go back to my properties, right? So here's some stuff that we can do. It says, allow user to add rows, true. Allow user to delete rows, true. Allow user to order columns, false. Resize. So these ones definitely, we're not going to allow this to happen because it's just a view. We want to select it and that's it. No adding or deleting. So let's take those away. False. And then false. So this will stop any kind of row adding and deleting. This is important because if I allow this, then it'll give a false sense that there's certain functionality that's existing here that it doesn't really exist, right? Because I'm not really doing anything with, I'm not allowing the user to really do it. Even though I allow them to do something here physically in the user interface, nothing happens. Okay, resize columns and resize rows, I'm okay with that. That's just, resizing so I can see what it looks like if I need to. Let's keep going down. Cell border style is single. Column headers border style, this is just a style, and headers visible, all that stuff. There's a columns collection, there's a different cursor style that we can use, and so on. And then it says edit mode, edit on keystroke or F2, right? That's the edit mode that we can use. It's enabled, enable header visual, grid color, location, and so on. There's one that's called read only. That's definitely what we want, read only, but be careful. So if I go to read only, if I click true, multi-select should be off. Multi-select should be also false. Multi-select shall stop me from collecting more than one row. If I have these features selected or these properties configured this way, it'll help me with my assignment number 5 if I was doing assignment 5, all right? Let's do this again and see what I can do now. So if I run this thing, now I can definitely select one, but I can't select more than one. If I control click now, I can't select more than one row. That's the first thing. I can't drag and select more than one row. I can't do that. I can select the entire row by clicking here. This is the selection column, because I'm showing this column right now, and I'm also showing the ID, all right? And we're going to come back to how not to show the ID, because I really don't care about the ID or this column, right? So again, I'm trying to help you guys with your assignment, right? So those are the ways. If I control A, again, I can't select all, and I can't double click and do anything. I can't change the data, which is important for us not to be able to do, guys. No changing data. And also notice the first name, last name, and email address is exactly how it appears inside of the database. And we'd like to make this nicer looking because it's kind of put together like this. And that's not a great looking style. Okay. So let's keep on going through here and see if there's anything else we need. So enable resizing is true. Headers width and scroll bars, we have both. Row templates is data grid view row index -1. All right. So that's something that we allow. Row cell errors, show cell tooltips, and show cell errors. That's true. Show editing icon, right? So again, what is the editing icon? If I was to run, if there's an editing icon, it'd be like a star. right? So that would be the editing icon. We don't have that editing icon because this row, we've made it read only. Okay, so that kind of took care of that one anyway. Visible is true, tab index is 0, and that's really it. I think that the selection mode, oh, this is also important. Selection mode is row header select, and what you can do is full row select. Now this is better, full row select. So let's do selection mode full row select. So if I did that, and if I ran it, now every time I click something, I select the entire row, no matter where I click. And that, my friends, is what we want. So once I select the entire row, now I have some of the functionality that I want. When I click something, I want the entire row to be selected. Cool. All right. Which row did I select? Right? Which row did I select, and what is that? Well, let's go back to code now. If I go back to my DB view form code side, right? I have this context data view form selected rows. Okay, remember that selected rows should give you an inkling that selected rows is going to be returning a collection of rows that are selected by the user. Okay. So if I was to print this out, right? So selected rows, and let's suppose I want the first row. So I want the first row that is selected, because remember, I'm only going to get one row anyway, right? So the selected row, and I want the first row selected, and I want some kind of, access. So I want, example, I want information from cells 0. What is that? What am I getting from cell 0? Cell 0, I'm getting a range of values. Let's print this out when I get this. So again, debug.writeLine. I want to kind of explore this with you because I think it's a good thing to explore, right? I mean, what am I getting when I do this debug.writeLine? Okay, when I do this thing. If I click on the row, so this is saying, okay, contacts, data grid view, cell click. When I click on the cell, I want to look at the rows that are selected, the first row, that's the 0th row, and the first cell, whatever the first cell of that first row, and I want to output it to the right line. Let's see how that works. So notice that there's nothing that's been selected because I haven't really selected anything. So click that, and then I get this, data grid view, text box cell, column index 0, row index 1. That's what I get. Okay, so data grid view, text block cell, column index 0, row index 2. Okay, so that's what that does. So I get where I'm clicking. I'm getting where I'm clicking. So column index 0, right? And then I need, and it's the row index that I'm looking at, row index 4, right? Column index 0. So that's what's happening here. Is I'm getting a row and column index. So I really don't care. If I click here, though, what's happening here? I get row index 4, column index 0. How about if I click there? Row index 4, column index 0. It's important to try and click all these areas here to try and understand what I'm getting before I do any kind of thing. What if I click over here? What do I get there? I get row index 1, column index 0. So it's actually looking at this, right? Row index 0, column index 0. Here, row index 0, whatever the last one was. And then this is row index 1, row index 0. This is row index 0, right? Row index 1, row index 1. So what I can do then, if this is what this is giving me, I'm getting column index, row index, right? I know that this row index 0 is the ID, right? That's what that is for the row index. Okay, that's the ID part. What if I hide that? So again, in the DB view form, and again, we're just building this up so you understand. That's why I'm doing it this way, right? So here's my DB view form. I'm showing ID and I'm showing all this stuff here. What you can do is if there's a little handle that's up here, a little smart arrow again, and I can go into where it says edit columns, right? Which is what I want. And if I look at my ID right now, I can remove it if I want to. right? And I don't really care about the ID being even included because I don't really care about it. I care about the first name, last name, and all this stuff. So if I was going to do, if this is $computer, I would care about the products, not necessarily the ID. I don't care about the ID, right? So let's remove the ID, okay? And then my first name, you can see that the data property name is first name, but I also have a header text that I can change to whatever I want. So I can space it out, make it nice. I can do the same thing for last name so that it looks better. Email address, as well as contact number. Okay, so those are all things that I want. I can also add a tooltip for that and whatever I want else in here. There's more configuration that can happen inside of here, inside of the edit columns option, inside of this little smart arrow thing, which is really cool. Okay, so lots of control. You can also do it through here. But I want to show you this way first. You can see there's an edit columns button down here in properties, and we're just bringing this little dialog box. So here what we're going to do is press OK. You can see now that things are rejigged, and you can see that email address and all that stuff is going to be in 2 lines. What if I ran this now? How would it look? It's going to look like this. Last name, first name, last name, email address, and contact number. They're kind of on top of each other. And I can't really resize anything. It doesn't allow me to do that. I can sort by clicking these buttons, no problem. That's what these do, okay? But, and now if I click 0, this is row index 0, this is row index, depending on what I'm clicking now, this is column index 0, row index 1, row index 2, right? Column index 0. And notice I'm getting column index 0 all the time, right? So column index is not really that important, in fact. No matter what I click here, it doesn't matter, right? Column index doesn't care, right? What I'm looking for is my row index, okay? So that means that, and again, I've just made it this way. If you really wanted to show everything or reduce the size of the font, you can do that too. So you can sit there and go to here, and I can go into, for this particular style, for the font size, I can edit items. You can see that that's for the menu. Let's try that again. I meant this one. Edit columns, right? You have lots of control here. So if I really want to, from a design perspective, you can look down and you can see the fill weight and so on. I can see the minimum width and the width that I have and so on. You can do all kinds of stuff in here to change some of this. So display different ways. If I really want to change this, the font style of the entire data grid view, then what I want to do is when I click on the data grid view itself, excuse me, is you can see that there is no specific font style here. It's inheriting the font style from the object that it's inside of, right? Which is interesting. Margins and maximum size and so on are here, read only and all that stuff we put in there. But in terms of aligning this style, so background color we can definitely check, right? Because right now we've made it the app workspace, whatever that is, right? Cell border style, we can change that and so on. And the columns headers height, we can do that. And we've made it so that it's auto sized, but remember it's going to inherit the size that we're giving it. Okay, so that's kind of something that you can see. So I wanted to point this out to you. Again, if I click here, you can see it's going to give me this again if I really want to, right? And I can make this bigger to help me configure some of these things in terms of design. So it says data grid view text box column. That's the design type. I can also rejig this data grid view. I can make it into a button column or a checkbox column. I can change the way it looks. For example, let's suppose I had in my database a Boolean value, true, false, and I wanted the Boolean value to appear here as a checkbox, on, off. I could do that by changing the column type for a first name to something else. Okay, we're not going to do that here because it makes sense that it's a text box column. But if you had some other kind of selection, you could do that. All right, so that's what this does. So that means what we said before was my row index is what I want. So again, matter what I choose, my row index matters. Row index 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever that is, right? My row index is specifying the row that's inside of this this area here. So whatever I've clicked, I've selected, it's going to give me a row index 0, 1, 2, 3, whatever, right? Okay, that's important to know. So let's go back to code again, and let's try and figure this out. So I'm just going to hide this one for now. So we know that context data grid view selected rows 0. So the first selected row that I select, my cells, right? The cells that I click, the first cell that I'm looking at only the first cell. That's why it's always giving me, if you notice, column 0, right? And if I press dot, and you can see that if I go row index, right? So row index is going to return the row index. So this is the ability for me to get the index of the row that I'm clicking on. All right. So this is an important thing that I can capture. So I want to capture the index, right? So I'm going to say that var row index is equal to this, right? Which is going to give me the row index of what I'm looking at. That's the row index, right? Once we have the row index, really at the end of the day, what I want to do, I want to match the row index, right? This row index with the selected rows. This is selected rows, so selected rows and the row index, right? So I only can select one row. That's what this does, right? That's the first thing. So if I selected more than one row, then I would have a collection of rows. I can select more than one cell in the row. And if I select more than one row, more than one cell, I would have that in here too. I'm only allowing you to select the entire cell, the entire row. So this gives me the row index that I'm looking for, row index. And if I put dot, it doesn't give me much more than that. Okay, so that's one thing that the object gives me. What else? So if I click dot, value. Okay, what about value? What would that give me? Cells, value. So this is row index. I'm just saving row index so we can look at it. What does value do? And then if I go to string, just in case it's not a string, it is a string. We know it's a string. But let's suppose I want to print the value to string. What would that be? So let's just run that now. And then if I click on something, I want to get something. Tony, right? So look, I'm only going to get the first name of the object that I'm clicking, right? So this is, notice this Tony, this is Bruce, this is Clark, Stephen, right? If I did that, and if I look at the cell 0, so the first cell in the selected row that's available, and there's only going to be 4 cells available because that's the way I've configured it, then this value here for cell 0 is really the first name value, right? So I don't need this. This is nice. I would nice to know which row I'm clicking at, but it doesn't matter, is what I'm saying, right? Instead, what we want is for first name to equal this, all of this, right? So this is, and actually we don't even need the toString, but we're going to put this in as a guard, all right? So we're taking the value of first name, and it's going to be returning a string. It's casting it into a string just to make sure that whatever we get is that. But if I made it this way, just by itself, value, and I printed out first name, then the first name value is going to come from whatever I'm clicking. Let's try that again and run it. So I click on this, and then, hey, look, and this, and anything I click there, it's going to give me a value of first name, and it looks pretty good, right? One thing that happened was my cell click, nothing happened with this cell click. I didn't trigger this cell click event the first time, right? Because cell click only happens when I click on something. And I want something to be selected the first time. When the form loads the first time, I want something to be selected. That's a form load event type, right? So I want to go back to my form. Remember, by default, I don't get a name, right? I'm just looking at one thing for now. So if I go back to my form, I want to double click somewhere on my form, which is going to create the load. It's going to take me to the load event. So load event loads everything up, right? And after I load everything up, what I want is I want to call this I want to manually call the context data grid view click event. That's weird. So can I do that? Is the question you're going to ask. And the answer is yes, I can. So if I say context data grid view cell click event, I need to pass in some stuff. I'm going to pass in the sender, and I'm going to pass in E. You need to pass in both those defaults. All right. So notice that E, which is event args, right? If I just pass in the sender object like this, that's not good enough, right? So I want to pass in E, but cell click, right, says I need two things. I need sender and a data grid view cell event args as E, right? Is what I want in there, right? Data grid view cell event args. All right, so I could do the sender. I know what the sender is, but this event args, I need to cast E as data grid view cell event args. And if I did that, that would satisfy the requirements for the cell being clicked immediately. And the cell click event, one thing that I'm not doing also is telling it which cell I'm clicking, right? So this is going to activate, but which one? Okay, so now let's see what happens if I did this. So it gives me Peter. So the first one is what's going to happen, which is good. This is what I want. So by default, Peter gets clicked. The first cell in this array of cells gets clicked. And that's what I want. So that's what this does. So this will satisfy the requirements of your assignment, because I'm just going to click the first object that's in my data grid cell, data grid view. Cool. Now, what I asked you to do was inside of the data grid view form, the DB view form, I want a label here or some kind of device to show what I'm clicking. So let's do that. Let's go to Toolbox. And I want to grab, kind of a label. I put that in there. It's going to be this. I want to make sure this label is the, selected data label or something like that. So selected contact label is what we're going to call it, right? So I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to call this selected contact label. There it is, selected contact label. And we're going to auto size it to false. So auto size is going to be false. So I can align the label the way I want, make it as big as I want. I know that I'm going to include first name, last name, and this kind of stuff. I want to include that, all this stuff here in this one label, right? So that's the data that I'm actually, kind of showing you. This is the one that's being shown. This is the selected object. It's going to show you here, but it's actually going to show you what you selected down here. And if you look at the requirements for the assignment, I just wanted to go there for you guys just a little bit. And again, this is all assignment help at this point. Okay, I'm not trying to do I'm not doing this to confuse you. It's really just I want to make sure that you have an idea of what to do for the piece parts of your assignment 5, which should be easier, not harder. That's the idea behind it. So if you look at the details, and again, this is just a recap. It's due next week, Friday, August 21st at midnight. If I look back down at the select form, it says that add a label to the top of the form that has he's about to make a computer hardware selection. Okay, that's just easy to do. Either using LocalDB or Microsoft Azure, create a database named $computers. I recommend LocalDB, right? I've given you the SQL database, by the way. The SQL database has been provided inside of the assignment. So if you go, I will show you where that is. Use the entity framework to connect the database server on LocalDB. Ensure you use the code first from database when creating your entity data model. I showed you how to do that, right? So this is all stuff that we did last day. Create a data grid form, a data grid view control, and make it read only to true. I talked about how to do the data source for the data grid view. And then add a label and a text box. We kind of talked about this at the bottom of the form that lets the user know which hardware he has selected. All right, ensure the text box is read-only properly set to true. Okay, so that's what I'm covering right now. This one mark thing right here is how we're doing it. Okay, so let's do this. So label and a text box. So label is your contact that is selected. So we'll call this selected contact label. Selected contact. All right. Let's make it bigger. and we'll make it so that it's somewhere in the middle. All right. Again, if you really want to make it exactly in the middle, you could span this entire area right here if you wanted to cheat. I mean, cheat, not really the right word. If you wanted to do a hack, is what I'm saying, and then just do one of these, and it's exactly in the middle every single time, right? Based on your form. And then some kind of text box that's showing the selected label again. So I can just do that. I can get a text box and drag and drop it inside here. And then we can make it so that the text box is read-only. It's kind of weird looking, but this is what I've asked. So this is where the text box is going to be. And let's suppose we call this text box selected contact text box. Okay, there it is. We want to make this read-only, like we asked. So again, it would be read-only to true. So you can't modify it. We can also change the style so it looks nice. So I can go background color. I want to make it so that it's white, right? And my text color, which is the 4 color, I want to make it so it's black. So then it doesn't matter what I do, it's going to look like it's a regular text box. You can only select, you can only see it, not select it. So I want to put in first name, last name, email address, and contact number in here somehow, right? I don't need to put all of it. I just need to show that this is the one that's been selected. So I want to grab a couple of things, first name and last name, maybe email address. I don't think I can put contact number in here unless I make this object, the font for this object smaller, right? And I haven't said that, but let's say I make it something like, I don't know, 16, right? And then I don't want my auto size, to be true. I want to be able to control the size of my text box. But again, if you notice that once I've done that, the size style, it conforms to the size that I've put, how I've made everything. It doesn't allow me to, I don't get control handles in here like I do with the label. It's automatic, right? There is this little smart arrow as well. And you can see that I can click multi-line, but that's all it allows me to do. The smart arrow doesn't really allow me to do anything else. So auto size here doesn't exist as an option, right? So I can't code it as auto size, right? I'm just putting it out there for you guys because you might think, well, I can just drag something in there and then I want to make it so that things can fit. Well, it's going to conform to the size of the font that you put in. So it's going to be slightly smaller font is what I'm making it. And also from a design perspective, this misalignment doesn't look great with the way that I've made my form look right now. Okay. I might as well do something that looks like this, which is just pull this down. So at least it's in line with this, this button to some degree, because it looks worse up here, I think. Right. The other way you could do it is you could, instead of doing it this way, you could put the selected contact there, and you could put I didn't tell you where to do it. I kind of give you an idea of how to set it up. You could put this here, and where you can make the selected contact larger, right? Again, it's going to fit more of the data that's in my selected contact in here, right? So that's definitely maybe a nicer way of doing it, okay? So this is where it's going to be, the selected contact text box, where I'm going to output what I'm clicking on, okay? And if I look here, right now what I've done is I've got this first name defined. I want to do the rest. So I want to kind of click all the other ones. So I'm going to grab this one and then just copy paste these ones. So this is going to be last name. And this will be the email address. And down here, this will be the contact number. Okay, so contacts. So that gives you the data that I'm selecting, right? Once I have this data, my friends, really it's a matter of taking this data and doing something with it, like going across to the next screen, right? So let's see what that looks like. So just like I did before, I could capture this as an object that I carry forward, right? It's part of my contact. It is a contact. It's got all the things that I need in my contact. I don't care about the ID. The only thing I care about is the actual contact object itself. and which is what I've asked you to do. All right. So here, instead of cell 1, we're going to sell cell 0, cell 1, cell 2, and cell 3, right? And let's see how this works. Cell 0, 1, 2, 3 in the row, right? And then what I want to do is, instead of debug.writeLine now, we have a vehicle for printing things out. We're going to say the contact selected contact text box dot text is equal to, and we're going to make it kind of add things together. So I'm going to say the first name plus a space. We can also add, do it the C#, the other C# style. We create a string and add things together. I'm just doing it this way, concatenation, the old style concatenation, last name, right? And then email address, and then contact number. Now it's not going to fit, guys. Even all this is just not going to fit because you're going to have a lot of data in here, right? Notice it gives me these little underscores. It says localized, local string, and it's going to give me a kind of a an option with C#, with the C# tools I have. It says convert to verbatim string, and then it basically says it just the verbatim string is what it's asking for me to do for all of them, right? So that's kind of one thing to do. Yes, okay, I could do it that way, or I could add. Remember, strings can also be added like this, so I can say that I want to make a string where I want to put these things here. I can say that first name is here, first name, last name. I don't need all of this, so I can just put in the spaces that I want and create my string the way I want it, as opposed to using some kind of additional pluses. So let's just do that. Get rid of all this and all this, and then just coordinate it so that it looks like a string type. So that way it's aligned right. All right, and then it's going to say, that's cool, Tom, but we might as well move to resource or convert to verbatim interpolation, which is kind of something that looks like this. Sure, I don't mind that, but that's what the text box is going to be. So both at and a $sign, it's an interpolation, but it's a verbatim interpolation. It recommends this as a way of doing it when I'm interpolating a string and attaching it to a text box. If I run this now, then we should see, when I'm running it, Peter Parker, Spider-Man example, and if I click on any one of these things, I'm going to get all that information changed as I go through here. Now, sure, I could definitely do this, right? And I can select it, copy paste it, do whatever I can, but I can't delete it. Can't modify, can't select more than one cell. I mean, I'm pretty good now in terms of what I've done. This is kind of what I've asked you to do. Select a contact. I've also said that if I go to the next page, I want to carry forward this information to the next page. Right now, it doesn't do that. So this is the contact information. I want to carry forward this contact in here, right? And or I can open up a contact list. I can do that too and replace it. So let's do it so when I go here the first time, I take the information from the previous page and carry it forward into here and put it in here, and then fill in the contact list with the single item that I want from what I've selected. Okay, so that's the one thing I can do. That's different than what I've asked you to do for the assignment, but it'll serve somewhat of the same process, okay? Some part of the same process. Now, this saves opens, and that's fine. But there isn't anything to save. Save, well, that happens in the previous form. So if I go back to the previous form, run that, it saves the entire list. That's what this does. Saves the entire list to file. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a single item. I can't do everything for you in the assignment. So I'm sure you can figure out how to do a single item instead of every item is what I've done here with a for loop. But I want to be able to carry this forward. So the way to do that, of course, well, there's two ways. One, we know that I'm going to have a new form, which is going to be the contact info form. The contact info form is something we've defined in my program.cs. This is right here, right? Here's my program.cs. So the contact info form is there. And remember what I can do. I could make it so that I inject this information into the contact info form. Why is that? I mean, again, I could do it that way. I could also make it so that I have a current contact selected or a current contact. Right now I don't have something like a contact list anymore. Remember, I took that away, right? But I could have an active contact or a current selected contact or something that I could do. And I think that's a better way of doing it, because then you would have a container that it would remember. So let's do that. So I could do that. I could say something like a public static, and I'll say I use the contact class, right? So this is, again, the contact class to make something called a selected contact. Selected contact is what I want. And I can instantiate this contact as a new empty contact. So I would do that somewhere down here. So say something like, hey, before we go to our DB view, we want to do this. We want to say that our selected contact is equal to a new contact. So we're just kind of configuring this so that you have some kind of empty container. That's all this is. Now that we have this vehicle, that's what it is, like a container. Then if I go back into my dbform.cs, right? When I do this, really, instead of doing first name, last name, email address, and contact number, here randomly could say that my it's my program.contact.selectedcontact first name is equal to this, right? This value. Now, one thing that I'm getting is, oh, hey, man, right? It says that cannot convert source object to source string. And this is why I said it before. We want to go to toString, because that'll definitely print out the toString value, right? So, and now here you can notice first name, last name, and email address and all that stuff is all messed up because my interpolation string is done. So I could do this. Okay. That's definitely one way I could do it. But then I'd have to change the interpolation string to this, which is totally fine. I mean, it's okay to do that. I would just break it down so that the interpolation string would have everything in there. But I think this might be a good way of doing things. So again, instead of making new variables, I could just add it to the current selected contact and go toString, which is, like I said before, probably a safe thing to do because it would sanitize what I'm getting from the database, right? So again, I just want this part here. So I want to do one of these, and I'll fix the interpolation in a second, toString. And the same thing goes here for the last thing, the contact number. Okay, contact number, and then toString. And then I can just take this whole thing and just put it in here, last name, and then the whole thing, making sure I don't have any extra spaces in here, although it won't make a difference. And then address, and then finally, it's long, but it works, right? And finally, the contact number. So that kind of does everything I want it to do, plus I store everything in a contact object container. Now that I've stored it in a container, let me run it first to make sure that this still works the way it's supposed to work. So right? These are all still working the same way. Now that I've got it into container, I can, when I move to the next page, when I go to my contact info form, all right, so here's my contact info form. And I want to go to the coding part, right? So when the page loads, right, on page load, now notice that there is no page load event right now, right? And there's some things we have to be concerned with as well in a second. If I go to my contact info design view, and if I double click on the page somewhere, I'm going to get this contact info form load. Then what I want to do is I want to get do it the other way around. I want to go into my contact info design, and I want to see that I have my first name text box, last name text box, email address text box, and contact number text box, and I want to inject the stuff from my contact in there. Now, I already have this kind of thing somewhere. If I go to my contact info form, I kind of do it here, right? Where I do this already. First name text box is equal to blah, 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 right? But here is a contacts array, right, as opposed to a single contact that I want to use, right? So I'm just putting this out there for you. So I have something like this. So I can do the simplest way, which is copy paste. This is not great, but it'll do part of my work. And then I know in my .cs file, which is my dbviewform.cs, I have the other part, which is this part. So now I just need to modify the style, which is something that looks like this. So cool. And then all I need is to do one of these. So I'm going to grab this and just replace this part. I could do a find replace as well. I'm just being, doing it by hand because sometimes find replaces can do bad things. So this loads it up, but only on load. And that means if I went back and forth, it would only do it once. And so load is okay, but the better event to use would be the activate event. All right, so when the form is activated, it does this, right? But let's see what the load event does anyway, just like before. So if I go from here, I choose Tony Stark and I go here, now it's full of the stuff that I've got in here by default. This is I've carried forward my information into here, and I want to show that that contact list is selected. Whatever that is, that's the thing that's selected. However, be careful, because if I want to show the contact list being selected, I do have a selected index changed event, and it's going to try and trigger this contact combo box selected index changed, right? That's what it's going to do. So an alternative way is to use what I already have. Right? And fill in my data. So notice that I have up on the top, I have this contacts list. My contacts list is going to be replaced if I load stuff up, right? But what I could do is I can attach my contact to my contact list instead of doing all this work. I could do something that looks like this. I could say, hey, contact list. So my contact list, what is it called again? It's called contacts. Yeah, I'll be okay. Contacts dot add program dot selected contact. Right. So that's what I want. If I was to do this to my contact list, right, as an example, and now we have to be careful, because what's going to happen is when I load, it's going to make a new contact and it's going to add a bunch of new contacts in there, right? So whenever I do a load event, what I want to do is clean up my contacts. So clear the current contact list first, right? Then add this stuff in here when I do an open file log dialog cancel result. So here I want to do something like my contacts. I want to do a clear. So anything that's inside the contact list is clean up the contact list first. Clean up existing contact lists, right? And then read the list from the file, right? So that's why I'm doing that. Now, again, this is not exactly what I've asked you to do on the assignment, but it doesn't matter. I'm just showing you that as soon as I add my contacts to my selected contact list, this adds it in, right? So that's one thing I'm doing. So I'm adding it to my contact list, number one. Two, I know that I can activate the contact combo box selected index changed event, right, kind of thing. I know I can do this, right? And it says my contacts are the ones that I want. So selected index is here. But I also set up a couple things here. So my contact combo box items.add, this is what I want to do. I want to add in my contact combo box items.add. I want to do this down here. So that's the one thing I want. So I want this contact last name, and this is from my contacts Or I can even go in to do selected contact. This one, selected contact, as it all works. Dot last name. I could do this, right? Selected contact. So I add this in. When my form loads, I do this. I add it to the list. It's important to add it to the list because then I want to select it. I want to make sure that it looks like it's selected, right? Which is this. Okay, so I want to do this next, just to make sure that it conforms with everything that I've done. So now this is triggering, right? So the first contact, whatever that is, contact 0, which is this one, is going to be the one that shows selected at the same time. So these three things. Now, what we'll have is something that looks like this, an error. Okay, let's see what it says. It says, object reference not sent to an instance of a contact. I want to add in the program selected contact object. So why is this? What's happening? So we know contacts is something that we want to add to, but where was contacts created? It's actually created up here, right? So this is nice, and it protects our contacts from doing this. So I can actually dispense with, this is here, that means that, because this is the way I coded it. Sorry, I forgot. I don't need this anymore. Let's get rid of this. I'll show you why. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say, hey, let's make a new contact list every time, right? So if I did something like this, a new list, instantiates a new list container. That's what it does. And if I was to do it again, instantiate another one, it just destroys the old one. So it's kind of a brute force destruction, but it works. So that means that down in here, I can just do one of these. So I say, make a new list, add it to the list, put the contact in, and it would work, right? So this way, it'll work the exact way that I want it to, so it doesn't cause an error, right? So it kind of shows you the only one is Parker, Peter, and this is the one that's selected. If I load a list item from the contact list, that replaces what I have here with other ones. So you can choose another one that's in there. All right. By the way, notice that the last one I added in there killed because this index had a range. Because again, what we're trying to do here is when we loaded it the other way is trying to go to the next list item. And what's happening is the way I've done it is I've created a bug because I've got this context that's going to be added in, and what I want is for the list to be cleared. So let's just to be clear, let's do that list clearing thing just to make sure, because sometimes what happens is when I'm loading in the contact, right, the contact list box is going to have multiple lists, multiple things selected. So here, if I go to next, I only have one, but if I load a new one, let's say I load this one, and then I have this, you can see that I have Parker in there twice. So Parker here, and then Parker here, right? And that's not really right. And the reason why I did that is because, sure, I did this, contact list, new contact list, right? But it didn't really clear what I had in there before somehow. So, hey, that's cool. I don't mind. I'm just going to go in here and do the exact same thing I said I was going to do before, which is let's clear that up. So before we read in for a new item for the list, read in the list from the file, let's clear the old list. So we'll say contacts, clear the contact list. So we're going to say contacts dot clear, and that kind of makes sure that anything is cleared out of there because it doesn't add a new one. I don't want that to happen. Let's try that again. So Peter, next, load, open, and then let's take a look at that. But we still have that extra Parker. Why? Because we also have to clear up the this combo box items add. We want combo box dot clear. So we're going to do a contact combo box dot. We want to clear this item. So items, so the items dot clear. So items is a list. We want to clear the item, clear the list, and make sure that there's nothing that's left in there somehow. So let's go in there, and now we go File, Open, We'll open up the list, and you can see now clearly there's nothing else. It's Bruce Banner that's been selected. There's only one Peter Parker, not more than one. That's going to mess things up. And that means that I can probably do one of these. I probably don't need to do one of these. I can just clear the combo box is what I want. Contact combo box list items. I want to clear that up is that's what's happening. Okay, and let's see if that still works. I'm just refactoring a little bit. So can Peter selected, but then I load up from file, and now I just choose the other file. Let's see, doesn't really matter, but now you can see that looks like I'm pretty good, right? And I'm not crashing, which is what I want to avoid. What about if I would load it up again? Then I'm going to get a different order, because remember the other one was different than this one, and that's still okay, right? So it's not crashing, which is not a one. Okay, now I want to go back. I want to have a back button here, because that's one of the things I asked you. You can always go back and reselect, right? So again, in my dbViewForm.designer, that's fine, but my contact info form design needs a back button. So I'm going to grab this next button. Be careful when you do this. Go back here and paste it. I have the style that I want, but I want to make it down here so I can go back. All right, so I want to reselect is what I want. So I'll call this the reselect button. You can also call it the back button, but I want to call it reselect. I'm just going to call this reselect contact. It's too bad that it's so big. I can make it bigger. So I can make this bigger, reselect contact. That's going to take me back to the previous form. Now remember, by default, it doesn't have any event, right? And I want to add an event. So my reselect button click event, it's going to go back to the previous form, which means I'm going to show the dbView form. So program.dbViewForm.show I love when I do this. And then this .hide, which hides this form, shows the other form, right? So show hide. And if I run this now, I can go here, and then I can go back, and then I can select something else and go forward. And then what? Why? Because I'm using, even though I selected Bruce Banner here, it's not loading Bruce Banner, because this only happens on form load, not form activated, like I showed you before. So we want to fix this problem. So dbViewForm.design, right? This is okay. Contact info form, though, instead of contact info form load event, this part, I don't want to do this on load. I want to do this on activated. So let's fix it. So contact info form designer, I want the form itself, right? We have the form itself, and it shows load event. We have the form closing and the load event. I also want the activated event, which is up here. Activated is going to do the exact same thing as this, right? But I don't want this event anymore, because you only need one. You don't need both contact load and activated. Just when it's activated for the first time. So load can go away, which means that, and I want to take it away. So a couple ways to do that is I can go into the contact form designer and then try and do one of these. So contact form info form load and click away. That will remove the reference. And then in my contact info form here, you can see now that it's been deleted. Sometimes you have to go into the designer and get rid of it too. But now it's contact info form activated, not load. And okay, cool. And then if I start again, and if I do the same thing, so Peter, I go over here, select it, it goes here, and then go back and select banner and go back. I'm going to have both. Uh-oh. It did kind of what I wanted, but it didn't show what I wanted. So that was another bug that happened. Okay, so let's try that again. So let's see what's happening here, just to get you a sense of what's happening. So you can see the bug. So I've selected Peter, go next, go back, select Bruce, go next, and now I have both Peter here and Banner here. it's like I gotta kill what's already there in order for me to go here. Okay, because if I click there, it's going to show Bruce. That's what it's going to do, right? And of course, banner is showing down here because it's been added to the combo box, right? So again, that's another thing that we can do. So notice that we have, when the contact info form is activated, we also need to clear up the combo box. So anytime we do this, we want to do this, clear context of the combo box, just to make sure that we're moving forward and back. So this is something that has to happen right here. And then we want to initiate a new list container and then add new items to the conda, a new contact to the contact combo box list, because it's a list that has that items list is a list, right? So that's what it does. So this should fix our problem. Let's see what happens. Again, if I click next, good, back, Tony Stark, next, Stark. I can still select them, no problem. I can replace them by something else. Let's try all the different combinations. What I'm going to try with you guys, right? Notice that banner did not kill this because suddenly now, well, it says Tony. Uh-oh. Right? So Stark is here and it shows Peter Parker. Oh man, what happened? So banner, now this is another error, right? So it loaded this, but it didn't kill this, right? So it's another thing that has to change. So whenever we load, we also have to kill the current contact. So that's another thing. So if you look over here in this load thing, right? We're making a new contact and we're doing a new contact list and all that kind of stuff. But somehow when we go back in there the second time, so we clear the list, we've cleared the list here, we make a new list here, right? But we haven't gotten rid of this stuff that's inside of the text containers, the first name text box, the last name, all this stuff here is there's still stuff in there, right? And it hasn't been replaced until I click on it, right? And that's an effect of me being activated out load. All right, so let's do this. So let's say when we come in there, let's make a new little private function. I'll call it down here. And we'll call this reset form. So we'll call this reset form event, or load, and we'll just take all that stuff. And we've done this before, right? And the other example we did. And we want to clear all the text box. I want to say dot clear for all of these things. I want to clear each of the objects inside the text box, right? Each one individually, because these are all the objects in the form. So clear. So this reset form is going to happen a couple of times. One, when I come in here, when I activate the form. So when I come in here, I'm going to clear up everything. So the next one. So reset form, which clears all the content, clear content from text boxes. Okay, that's what it does. I'm going to do the same thing when I load, right? Because before I load, I want to do that too. So I'm ready to clear this. I've agreed that I'm going to do this new it's not a cancel. It's something I'm going to reset the form, clear up the combo list, right? As an example, this is separate. And then now I could put this together because notice that I'm doing this twice. So I might as well put this in here one time. So I clear the form and then clear in the combo box too. So I might as well just do that because I'm doing it twice anyway. And then this way the reset form thing resets the combo box as well. That's what that does, right? So then I don't have to do that here. Again, refactoring a little bit. All right, let's try it now and see if that fixes the problem. So Peter, right, back. I want to select Bruce, go back, got this. Now load up this, right? Bruce, Parker, Kent, banner. Uh-oh. This looks okay, but look at this. Okay, wait. Those are the same. Nothing's changing here. So that's a weird thing. That's a really weird side effect. So and this, it's calculating the last one. So strange is calculating Stark. Stark is calculating Peter. That's kind of weird, right? Like this works, but then no, and not this one. And that's an effect of me loading it. What if I just did this again? So let's go back to starting off the form again. I just want to see when the error, it's a bug, right? It's not causing me to fail anymore, but it's a bug. Peter Parker, next, and then I load the form, right? So I load this contact form, which gives me Bruce Banner, but Peter Parker still doesn't change, right? Still doesn't activate. Because even if I click on here, it still shows Peter Parker, not, and this shows Bruce Banner as an example right in here, but not this one. This one shows the last piece of data that I had in here, right? That's interesting. That's interesting that I did that. So that's the first time that we've seen that happen. We know we've cleaned it up and everything else. So what else could be happening? So are you guys still not able to hear me, guys? Are you guys good or no? Sorry, I know that some people are saying they can't hear me, but that was as 11:14. Are you guys able to hear me now? Check mark. I see a check mark. Everyone else? Yes. Okay, that's weird. Not sure why you weren't able to hear me, but okay. So yeah, so this is an issue, right? So you can see now that, oh, that was even weird. See that was a weird side effect. Okay, and it gives me the last one. And can I type in there? Yeah, I can type in there, and this will actually search. So I can say I want Kent. Give me Kent first, but it gives me nothing. It doesn't give me it gives me the wrong. It's almost like it's ignoring the first item that's been selected in here inside of this contact list, right? So even though I'm clicking and it's loaded everything in here. So here, again, let's try this again. So to show you what's happening. So I'm carrying it forward. Yeah, nicely. This works, right? But as soon as that happens and I press open and I open up something new, let's say this contact list, sure, it loads. So it loads everything in here. It shows me everything, but it doesn't load this. It doesn't load whatever I'm clicking on anymore inside of this. And we have to see which one I'm selecting. So this is like Peter Parker that's being selected somehow. Like it's almost like it's filling in the details differently, right? Which is weird, right? Because I mean, I've just loaded a file and I should be replacing what's inside of my first name, last name, and so on. Let's see what the order that we're doing it in. This is a bug that we're going through and we're going to try and fix it. So we reset the form, resets everything. That's what clearing does. Clearing the combo items actually clears up the list. That's what this does. When the form is activated, I reset the form for the first time, right? And I make a new list. I add an item to the list, selected contact. That's what the item is. And then my selected contact gets added in here as well, right? Program selected contact gets added. And then my selected index is 0. That's the first index that's being selected. Yes, excellent. So that's going on. But when I load the form, now, let's see what's happening. So I make a new contact, right? I make a new contact list, which destroys the old one. That's what should happen, right? And cool. So my contact list is destroyed, but that's happening maybe too early, right? What if I press cancel? Do I want my contact list to be destroyed? That means my actual current form that's showing my data is no good. So maybe what I want to do is not do this here, but actually do it here. Before I actually load the list or whatever, clear the contact form, all right? So after I know that the stream reader is opened, I can do that. But that doesn't really stop anything. Okay, so this is just a setup for the stream reader. So I'm making a new list. I reset the form, which resets everything. then I add a new contact. I add new contacts to the form, right? And I add it to the contact list, whatever that contact list is. I add, right? And then I make sure that the selected index is 0 again, right? Selected index is 0. And my selected index changed because I'm selecting index 0 again. It's going to say that, okay, take the first item in the contact text box, selected index, whatever that is, and populate that in the text box. All right. So what is the contact list itself? What does it have in it is my question to you, right? Again, what it should be is nothing, but somehow that's not happening. Sometimes I'm retaining data somehow. I'm just going through it with you so we can see the bug. So here's the bug. Let's try it again. I move that now, and let's see what's happening. Okay, now that looks like it's better, right? So now it looks better, right? It looks like when I move that contact list down where it is, it somehow retained. It fixed my problem. Right, so that looks like it's good. Let's go back and restart this one now. So again, we're checking the next part. So I'll go back here. I'm going to check Bruce Banner and go next, and Bruce Banner selected. Go back, choose Peter Parker, go next, Peter Parker selected. Yay. Or I can load from my contact list text, and I select Kent, and I can do that. Guys, we're good now. Now we've fixed everything. You know, and it's just an order of how we've done this. I'm going to put this up on GitHub because this should give you some hints on how to do everything you need to do and then some for your assignment number 5. All right, which is what I'm hoping to help you with. Changes. See, these are all the changes. I'm going to say added selection functionality on DB view form, which is really what we've done. On commit all, I'm going to go home, I'm going to go sync, and I'm going to go push. And that basically we're going to stop there when in terms of this whole project. I wanted to show you this project because I want to make sure, even though I spelled combo box as combat box, a combat box. I don't know how that worked out to be a combat box, but whatever. You can fix that error. But that's it. That's basically this project took care of everything for assignment 5. Any questions around how to do something for assignment 5? Again, I'll take more questions next week on Monday. Remember, Monday and Friday, just as a reminder, today's the last official lecture. Monday and Friday, what we're going to be doing is, Monday and Wednesday of next week, I'm going to be open office hours where I come in and help you with your assignments, give you feedback on the current stuff you've got to me, all that stuff, so you're up to date. Hopefully you'll have everything that you need. So as you're doing your final test, which I'm going to release next week, and a final test, remember that we're going to do, it's going to be a practical test that I'm going to ask you to do something fairly small that's reasonable to do within a 2-hour period. Right? When I give it to you, you'll get it on early in the week, like Monday, Tuesday. You'll have until Friday to get it done, but it shouldn't add more load to your work. It's only 2 hours, and it'd be like doing an exam, but I'm giving you the flexibility of doing it anywhere you want. Okay? As opposed to, you must do it on Monday or you must do it on Wednesday. I don't want to give you that kind of pressure. If you take more than 2 hours to do it, it's okay. Right? That's the advantage of this what I'm offering you. Disadvantages for some people, they won't do it. And whenever I give an open exam like this, sometimes there's some person that just will forget. They'll forget to do it. It's not a priority for them, right? But meanwhile, it's 25% of your grade, guys. So if you don't get it done, that would be a very bad outcome. Please don't forget when I submit it next week. I'll make an announcement that says, hey, by the way, here it is. As an example. And then what's going to happen is that you're going to, you're going to forget, and that would be bad. One other thing I'm going to do for my Zoom meetings next week, which I'm going to mention to the other groups as well, is I'm not going to make multiple Zoom meetings for the whole day. All right. So I'm not going to sit there and go like, Monday, I've got a Zoom meeting for COMP123, and I got another Zoom meeting for COMP125, and I got another Zoom meeting for COMP301. So those are my 3 courses that I'm teaching this semester. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to open up this open session. And the open session is going to run from 10 a.m. all the way until 6:30 p.m. on Monday. And on Wednesday, I'm going to say it's going to open up or not 10 a.m., but 10:30 a.m. all the way until 4:30 p.m. on the Wednesday. And then Thursday will be just an open session for the people on my Linux course. But this way, I'll have one session, and you can come at any time during that time, as opposed to you having a specific slot. You come in, it'll be an open time. You come in any time during that period of time, and it'll be an open session where you can, if you have time to come in and talk about problems or whatever, I'll take care of it. I think that's what I'm probably going to do. All right. If not, you'll see an email that comes out that says, "Oh, I've decided to do separate sessions or whatever." It's up to you. It's up to you when you join. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make it so that you have options, so we can have a conversation just in case you have any feedback that you need, or problems with your assignment, or anything else, problems with your test. I want to help you with anything that you have a problem with next week. Okay, let's close this one down. So this project is done, and I want to talk briefly, very briefly, about test-driven development. And that's why it's called an intro to test-driven development. So what is it? We want to talk about what unit testing is really briefly, and test-driven development as an overview. From a unit testing perspective, it's a different way of doing things. Okay, I want to point this out first before we start off. So far, what we've been doing is this. And you might have some plan, and we haven't done really a plan or some kind of class diagram lately, but we could have a plan, a class diagram or a UML diagram for your classes that you want to create. We could do it that way. And then from the plan, you code. And then, or you have this idea of what you want to do and you code as you go. A lot of times people do that too, without any plan whatsoever. So the advantages of that way, this way we've been doing it so far, is speed, right? I can code up an application fairly quickly, I would say. As long as I know what I'm doing, I can, even looking it up on Google or whatever, I can code fairly quickly and get what I want to do into a pretty decent shape. I can look at some requirements and I can follow the requirements and get them done. But now what we're seeing is, what I've talked about is get it done, make it work, and then refactor afterwards. Okay. And there's another way of thinking out there, which is, wait, no. Instead of doing it that way, we want to create tests for every component we add in. So more of a different approach to coding. So TDD, or test-driven development, starts the other way around. It says, okay, I want to make it so that every component or functionality I add in is tested and testable, every single function. So what is the advantage there? It creates a more solid program. That's what it does, at the cost of speed. Now there are two trains of kind of thought for this. There's two bodies, people, two different groups maybe, that think in different ways. There's also another way of doing things. There's also we're using object-oriented programming. There's other methodologies you can use: data-driven programming, functional programming, like with Python, and so on. There's also so data-oriented programming, object-oriented programming, functional programming, different methodologies of doing the programming itself, right? And then there's test-driven development and behavior-driven development, those two different things. So BDD or TDD. TDD is what we're going to be talking about today, test-driven development. And what that means is I'm going to make a test first, and then from my tests, I'm going to write my code. And that's kind of backwards. So imagine I don't have any code to test first, and I make a test. And then from that test, I want to make that test first fail, then pass, and then I want to refactor it. Totally different way of thinking, right, than the way we're doing it. And let me explain this in a little bit. So test-driven development, we use unit tests that drives the design and development. So instead of us driving design development from a UML diagram or by writing as we go, like we've been doing so far, maybe this semester and last semester, we're using a different driver for that, a different way of doing it. And the way it works is this, advantages, okay? So really clear intentions. It encourages decoupling, because what we want to do is we want to say that every method or every class should do one thing. All right. So instead of a method doing multiple things, method should just do one thing. And each method should be testable, which means they have to, each method, whether they do something or not, should return some kind of value. It should never return void. Okay, that's what we should try and do. Or the output from that method, when I do the method, there should be an effect, whatever the effect is going to be. There's got to be something we can test. So a good advantage of it is it enhances debugging, it reduces rework, right? And it's more efficient from a code perspective. When you write your code at the end, it's super efficient. Disadvantage of this method is slow. I would say at least half as slow as what we've been doing so far. But when mistakes equal to money, again, some people say time is equal to money. I want to get it out as fast as possible, Tom. Great. Do it my way. Do it the other way. Make it work first, then refactor and do all your testing after. Yeah? Or the other way, which is do it right the first time, right? Test the crap out of it. I don't know if there's a better way of saying it. And then make sure that everything works before you move on to the next thing. More efficient, more in terms of once methodology. Do it right the first time, but really slow. Okay, so that's the kind of the handout. The way we do TDD or test-driven development is like this. First, and I'm thanking LinkedIn Learning for this image. First, we do we have this method where we do red, green, and refactor. So red means we want to make the test fail. That's the first part, okay? We want to make sure we make the test fail. And you're going to say, well, why do we want the test to fail? So we know that it can fail, right? It ensures that the test will fail when we want it to, all right? Because if I don't test that if I don't test that the test can fail, then if I get the test passing, I don't know if it's really passed. Does that make sense? You want to test that the test can fail first before you make a test that passes. Okay, that's the first thing. So make sure it fails first. Next, make sure that it passes. Following by refactor it to death. And refactoring means change your code, make it more efficient, take out duplicated code if necessary, all that stuff, and then refactor it. And you want to keep on repeating the above steps for each unit test case. That's what we want to do over and over again. All right? So again, it's a methodology. Test-driven development is a way of doing it, of coding or a way of creating your applications that is much different than we've been doing so far. So in TDD, we want to do something like this. There's actually 3 steps inside of the other steps. So we want to arrange, we want to act on what we've arranged, and we want to assert. So arranging means we want to initialize variables and values and stuff. Act, we want to call the methods, as an example, from the thing that we're testing, all right? And then assert means that we want to make sure that the value we're getting back from the method or the tests we're performing is going to work. Okay, so arrange, act, and assert. Okay, so this is a 3-step pattern inside of this idea of red, green, refactor. All right, so red, green, refactor, this is saying how do we set up our tests, right? Here, this is actually saying, okay, fine, for each unit test, I want to do arrange, act, and assert. Okay, let's try it. That's what this is. Let's try it. So first, what we want is we want a brand new project for today. I'm going to make a project called, so again, I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to make it a forms project, forms application, right? This one. And I'm going to click next. And we're going to call this forms project COMP123 M2020, and it's lesson 12, part 2. All right. And I'm going to press create. And I'm going to put this up on GitHub. So the first thing I'm going to do before I do anything else, right? As soon as this app is created, is put it up on GitHub. But yeah, I'll do that. And because this is form 1, this is like our initial commit. So I'm going to go to Team Explorer. I'm going to go to Home. I'm going to go to Sync. And notice that there's nothing. This means that my solution has not been added to source control. So I go to my solution itself, right-click, and I want to add it to source control, which means that's like a git init. That's what that does. All right. So let's go back. So Team Explorer, I'm going to go to GitHub, publish to GitHub, and it's going to show me where that is, GitHub. I'm going to go into Centennial, and I'm going to make it published. So COMP123 M2020 Lesson 12 Part 2. Yeah. And just to be, so we're kind of having this, we have our GitHub link for week 12. I'm just going to edit properties in place here and modify this. So this is like part 1 of our link. So this is part 1. And I want to add another GitHub link for part 2. So GitHub, Centennial College, and then there's part 2. It's empty right now. Pretty much nothing else has been happening. So I'm just going to grab this one, copy it, go back to here, and I want to make a new link, and I'm going to put that in there for you guys, which is GitHub link for week 12, part 2. Okay, so you have that link as well. So you can, it's different than the other one. So we're not going to corrupt what we've done in the other work that we've done today. Okay, so this is part 2. So you have 2 links for GitHub this week. Okay, so part 1 and part 2. Nice, nice. And there's your GitHub link. So we're going to be following this. Excellente. Now I want to do the following things. This is my testable form that I'm going to make. Right, so we're going to call this the test form. So I'm going to rename this, call this test form. Okay. We're not going to do too much with the visual stuff today with this form at all, actually. We're going to use the test form just to show our tests or show some stuff. So form 1 is going to be called test form. So we have a basic project. So this is our main project. So COMP123 M2020 Lesson 12 Part 2 is our main project right now. Okay, we need another project, and the other project that's inside of the solution, so second project, is going to be the test project. Okay, so hear me again. So there's the main project, and there's going to be another project that tests this project with a unit test. So I'm going to right-click on my solution now, not on my project, my solution. Right-click on my solution. I'm going to add a new project, okay? And then it's going to say, okay, what kind of project do you want to add? I don't want to add another forms project. I want to add something called the unit test. And notice that there's a list of projects you can add. The one I want, if you want to find something that says N unit test project, this is the one I want, the N unit test project, this one, and click next. So the unit test project is going to be the test form unit test project. You can call it whatever you like. So we're going to call this test form unit test project. Okay, because we're testing this application, whatever that application is. Create. What this is going to do is it's going to make a brand new project. So there's 2 projects now. There's going to be COMP123 M2020 Lesson 12 Part 2, and then there's going to be this other one that says test form unit test project. Okay, and there's going to be a default unit tests that's right in here, a unit test class. Okay, this will not work. I can't test anything on my COMP123 M2020 Lesson 12 Part 2 from my test form unit test project, because my test form unit test project does not know anything about COMP123 M2020 Lesson 12 Part 2. It has no idea what this is. All right. So what we need to do is go into your dependencies inside of your test form unit test project, right-click on your dependencies, right? And what I want to add is, actually, I think it would be under, would it be under dependencies? It would be under dependencies. I want to add a project reference. That's what I want to add. And it's going to pop up to this one. So notice I'm adding the project reference. So this project, COMP123 M2020 Lesson 12 Part 2, man, that is a project reference to the unit. So let me show you what I did that again. I went to dependencies, right-clicked. I went to add project reference. And I'm going to click this little button here and press OK. What this does is it adds a new reference to my project right here, projects that I'm testing. If I click there, you can also add a project reference here. You can totally do it this way or here. Same thing. Yeah. So that's what you need. That's a requirement for us to do unit testing at all. Now that I've got my project listed, which is in here in the projects that I'm testing, I want to change my unit test class itself. This is unit test 1. You can make as many classes here as you want. We're just going to use one. We're going to use unit test 1. We're going to keep this as a default name. And unit test 1 is going to change my, or it's going to test my contact class. I don't have a contact class. Let's change this unit test 1 to say contact class unit test, which is what this is going to be. All right. Notice I have different test methods, right? Which we're going to kind of figure things out. So again, I'm going to right click here. I'm going to rename this thing. I'm going to call this the contact class unit test.cs. Okay, so that's what this is. My test form is the test form unit test project. My class is called tests. That doesn't make any sense. Let's rename this class so it renames the class properly. So we're going to say rename. So refactor, rename. We're going to call this test class contact class unit test. Okay, contact class unit test. It's got to match the name. I recommend it. All right, so contact class unit test, contact class unit test. Cool. We have something called test 1. All right. Notice that there's an assert statement. Assert statement is there's different kinds of asserts. So an assert is basically the test that you're trying to do, right? Here in test 1, this test number 1, this is a method, a public method that's inside of this class. I want to test the properties of the unit test of the contact class, but there is no contact class, right? So what I want to say is I want to test to see that the contact class exists, right? So that's the first test. So test contact class exists. Okay, that's the first thing I want to do. I want the assertion to fail. So assert.fail is what I want this to happen. Assert.fail means I'm going to make it fail for the first time. And the way you run tests is you're going to go up to the top here where it says test, and you're going to click in run all tests. When you run all tests, it's going to say that, okay, cool, I'm going to run it. It's running the test here, another Test Explorer window, and I've made it fail, right? Remember we said first make it fail. And so they can see that the test contact class exists. That unit test just failed. Okay. It took 29 milliseconds for it to run. A good idea is to run all your tests in a window. So what you can do is you can say, I want my tests, right? There's usually in my Test Explorer itself, here's my Test Explorer. I can align my Test Explorer anywhere I want. I want to align it to the left over here. And again, you can unpin it if you want, just like normal. So I can bring it into being and unpin it, right? So I only see it when I need to, my Test Explorer. So my test contact class exists. Okay, so that means that I want to make a new object. We know this test can fail. And what I want is I want to start typing. I want to say, okay, I want it in my setup. So this is my setup. And again, if we look at the PowerPoint, there is an arrange. The arrange happens up here. So we arrange up here, okay, in my setup. And this is the setup typically for the entire class. Anything to do with the contact class, we're going to arrange stuff up here in the setup. Notice that there's these little annotations for my test class. One is this annotation setup. The other one is an annotation that's test. If I want to open up a new test, I make a new method and just add the test annotation to it, and then it can run tests. Okay, that's what it'll be. Okay, so that's the first part. So arrange. Then we want to act and assert. Okay, so act and assert goes in here. So act means, hey, get access to those methods or classes or whatever you're testing. And the next one is assert. Notice the assert is already in there. So arrange, act, and assert. we're still following the red-green refactor. We're in the red phase right now because we're failing and we made the test fail. Okay. Let's continue to make the test fail. So what I want now is I want to instantiate an object of type contact class, right? So my contact class doesn't even exist. So guess what's going to happen? I can't even write my test contact class exists, which means I'm automatically failing, right? So because it doesn't exist. I mean, if I run the test right now, then well, I can't even do it. I can't even instantiate something. There's nothing for me to do, right? So the next thing is going into this. This is driving me to create a contact class, test-driven development. So in my lesson 12 part 2 now, my actual project, I'm going to right-click here. I'm going to add a new class. So I'm going to add a new class. We're going to call it the contact class. So contact, add. There's my contact class. Let's make it public. All right, public class. Contact. So now what I want is I want to make an object of this class. I want to make sure that it exists, right? So I'm going to say that inside of my act, I want to go to my COMP123. Now, one thing to do is what you may want to try and do is do something like this. You might be tempted to do using and then COMP123 lesson 12 part 2. This is okay because then what this can do is I can say if I want a contact class, it comes up there and I don't have to type in COMP123 M2020 lesson 12 part 2 every single time, right? So my contact class, I want to call it contact, is equal to a new contact. So that's what that is, right? And in my assert, I want to make sure that, let's see what kind of assert options I have. If I go assert dot, you can see that I can make it fail. I can check if they're equal. I can check if it contains something. I can check if it's greater than, or I can ignore it. Is assignable from, is empty, is false. Oh, here it is instance of. All right. I want to assert that something is an instance of the contact class. So I can say that, cool, I want to make my contact, is that an instance of my contact class? So contact, capital C. And it's going to say, give me a couple of errors. So one is, it says contact is a type which is not valid in the given context, right? Class name is not a valid, the class name is not valid at this point, all right? So instance of, and it should be the other way around. Let's try that another way. So it's contact. Let's try that, how it's going to be. So notice it says contact, that's correct, but contact is not correct. And you can fix this by putting a type def of in front. So it says, let's assert that contact, which is this object here, is an instance of this type of contact, is a type of contact. That's what it is. And then this should basically say that the class exists. It should kind of confirm that the class exists. We're not doing much arranging up here. If I really want to do arranging, what I could do instead is we could make it so that this is something that we want to kind of set up on the top here. And the arrange step is kind of something that we've already did by creating the class and so on. But now we want that test to pass. So again, I'm going to go into my test explorer and I'm going to kind of pin it up here and you can run the test. And let's see what happens. Now we're hoping for that things go green. So notice that test goes green now. Yay. Wonderful. We're not going to touch this class anymore, this method. This method is done, right? And now we're going to test to see other things that are happening. Okay, cool. What other things can we test for the class? Well, we want to make sure that, our file name, our first name, last name, and all that stuff, they're instances of strings and so on. And I want to test I want to have some mock data that I can add in there to test to see that those are the truth, that works. Okay. So this is kind of cool. So I can make a new test method. I start with a test and I call it public void. And then I'll use test that my contact class properties. And again, I can test each property separately. So test contact class first name is string. Contact class first name is string. That's how long you make it, man. It's like you make your methods so that each method tells you what you're testing. Okay. And now you can notice I have to do this contact thing again, where I'm going to do this act and assert again. Okay, so I'm asserting, I'm getting another contact. Here it is. I'm doing this again. And in my contact, what I want is when I act, I make a contact, and then I want to say something like contact dot first name, right, is equal to Tom. And that's my test. And then you can see instantly that there's a problem. Contact does not contain a definition for first name. Remember, I'm doing it the other way around. I don't have a first name. Well, it says, there's a help. It says create property first name. Done. So now it actually creates the property first name for me. Wonderful, right? So I'm actually doing it the other way around, right? So now if I go back, first name exists, and I can test to see. I want to make it fail, so I want to assert the wrong thing. I want to say that let's assert that it's an instance of a type of integer. We know that it's not an integer. We want to make it fail first. So we're going to say that the type of integer is what contact.firstname is. All right, that's what we want. And let's make sure it's spelled properly, int. So we're going to make sure that this assertion fails. Let's make it fail first, then make it thing. And the way to do that is, notice that there's a little diamond here. The diamond basically says this thing's never been run. This means that this is passed before, right? It's already passed, test passed. We're going to go to my test explorer now, and I'm going to go where it says run all tests, this little arrow. There's the two arrows, and there's a single arrow. The single arrow, I can run one test at a time. The double arrow runs all tests. Let's run the single arrow first. So I'm going to run the test contact class, right? And it fails as we expected because it said that this test failed because integer first name is not an instance of integer. So we know it will fail if it was the first name. So here we can change this to string. We're going to make it pass now, right? And once we've done this, then this little piece there, we know that first name now is a type of string. Again, this is a very contrived example, okay? And if I go to my Test Explorer window, I can certainly test this again, which we're going to make sure it passes. Now, we want to make sure that since this passed, let's test everything to make sure we didn't break something else up here. And this is the beautiful thing about tester in development. Just because this passes doesn't mean I didn't break something up the chain that passed before. So let's run everything again to make sure it all passes. And you can see now that everything is passing. Everything is green. Okay, so cool. Wow. So first name, and I want to do this for last name and email address and everything else. And I want to keep on doing it for all the rest of the stuff. I could do it that way for all of them, instance of. And then we can start doing methods, right? So let's, I'm going to fast track. I'm going to assume that we've done all these methods just because we're lacking time. So I'm going to go this one, and there's like 4 methods in here. And we don't normally do it this way, but we don't have time, right? So test first name string, we're going to make this called, we're going to say test last name string. And this is going to be test email address is string. And we're also going to test to see that our contact number is string. Testing all those things. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off with each of these items. And we're going to make it fail, right? So we're going to say that these are integers here, here, and here. And then I'm going to go into my last name and say that my last name is Smith. It's not Smith, but we're going to say my last name is Smith. And last name doesn't exist, which means I'm going to create last name as a way of doing that by property. So that's been created. Never passed, though. And then we're going to say that I'm also going to do the same thing for email address. Right, so email address is going to be tom at example.com, right? And we can see that that also fails. Make the property, right? And finally, we're going to change this so that it is contact number is equal to 416-555-5555. There it is. There is no contact number. Let's make it. In the properties, you can see that it actually keeps track of if it's passed or not, right? Inside of my other application, right? My program. All right, cool. Now let's test them all and see that they all fail. So I'm going to go to run test. Let's run them all just to be clear. And you can see some of them are going to pass and some of them are going to fail. So 2 of them pass, class exists and first name exists, but last name failed. Okay. So last name failed. Notice that the other one stopped, right? So test contact class last name, tech class email. This one failed. That means the other ones, it just stops, doesn't fail. So we want to make sure that it passes by making this a string and running it. So we're going to go here and run everything. So now, all right, so it failed. So it says contact last name is Smith. And I'm testing the wrong thing. Well, this is interesting. It says I am, oh yeah, because I didn't change this. Contact last name, right? Last name. I'm not there is no, remember, look, there is nothing like this. This is perfect. And because I'm testing the wrong thing, it's a copy paste error. Let's make sure that these are here and they're proper. So my tests have to be proper too, because the assertions have to be right. I'm just checking instances right now. So I'm going to go test explorer. Let's run the tests again and see what I get. Cool. So I've got 2 tests that have failed and 3 tests that have passed. So the contact class exists. Its first name, last name exists, but my contact number and my email address, they're wrong types. There should be strings. Let's just make them so that they're going to pass now. And now we've created my contact class in a very contrived example of how to do stuff with test-driven development. So why is this great? This is great because guess what? I've ensured that all my data types are aligned. I've done a thorough test of my class. Now this example, my contact class has been created through test-driven development. You can see each of the properties have been tested and you can see it clearly here because NUnit tests connect with any other project by default. Let's make I want to check one more thing before we go. I want to check that we can say hello to my contact. My contact says hello, right? So we're going to make a says hello method. Okay, so again, going to my test. So there's my test itself. In my test class, you see all these methods that I have here. I can always, the ones that I've tested that have passed, I can scrunch them up. I don't need to see them right now. These are all the tests that have passed. I leave them here. I don't get rid of them ever. Because I could break something else down here or make something else down here that breaks something else up there. And I don't want that to happen. Or if I refactor something, let's say I refactor my class so then somehow it doesn't include a last name, it'll break a test. And that will indicate, hey, I gotta make sure that something else doesn't break. And that's why unit tests like this are a beautiful thing. So again, I want to make a test. Trying to go fast here, public void. And I want to test that the says hello method works. Says hello method returns a string, right? Returns and it has to be the right thing too. Returns appropriate string. Okay, that's what the method is called. It looks pretty big. But look, it's very descriptive. Test says hello, method returns appropriate string, right? So notice I'm using test in all these things. And then we want to kind of do this. So again, in the, we want to do our 3 steps, just like before, where we did our other 2 steps, an act and assert. I want to do act next and then assert. So when I do this, I want to set up my contact class. So I want to say, again, just like before, and if we're just going to, for the sake of time, I'm just going to do this. So in my contact, I'm going to create contact dot first name, we're going to say is equal to Tom. We're going to do it all now. And contact dot last name is equal to Smith. Contact dot email address. Again, I could probably paste, but it's okay. And then finally followed up by contact dot contact number, which is equal to 416-555-5555. So again, I'm testing each part. So now this is what's required, and I want to make it so that I assert that what the return type, right? The return type is equal to a certain thing. So I want to say is equal. You can also say equals or, whatever. Equals, now you're testing objects. Man, there's different ways. Equals, there's also not equal, are the same, as an example. Is positive, multiple, negative. Like these are all the things, the different kind of text you can run. Is not empty, is instant stuff. I want to say equals. And I want to say that it says use assert are equal. Okay, do not use. Sure, are equal. It tells you what to do. It's a deprecated method. And I want to use from one type to the other type. All right, so I want to say that the first one is going to be, it should say Tom as an example, or we'll say Mike, make him fail first. Mike says hello. So Mike, and then bear with me, guys. I know I'm running over time. Says hello. So that's what it's going to say, and it's going to do that with my contact dot says hello method, right? My contact dot says hello method, right? That's what's going to do it. Now notice that there is no says hello method for my contact, so I'm instantly going to fail this this problem. So I want to create the contact says hello method, right? So here it creates that says hello method, and it says not implemented, right? So throw a not implement error. Okay, cool. Let's go back to that contact. Does it actually do what it's supposed to do? Well, this will actually fail. I want to fail twice here. So now I want to run this test. You can actually run it from here. Run. And we're going to see that it fails because we want to make it fail. So contact says hello. It says not implement exception because we didn't do that. Cool. We want to implement this method now. So we're going to go into our contact. Here it is. And instead of this, I want to kind of do what it's supposed to do. So it's going to say my first name. So I want to return, instead of an object, I want to return a string. And it's going to return and again, I want to use the dollar in kind of an interpolation string. So it's going to return first name, and then says hello, right? Is what it's supposed to do. First name says hello, and that will take care of things. If I go back to here now, I've made it fail again. So the first part is there's nothing there. The second part is I'm going to make it fail again because I'm putting a different value in here. It should say Tom, right? But let's try this out. So I'm going to run this again. So we'll run the test again, which again should fail, which is it says, look, and it tells you it's expected this, Mike, but got Tom, right? Got Tom. Well, of course, Tom is not going to be right because we put Tom in here. We made it fail. Let's make sure it works. So we can say we're expecting Tom to say hello because Tom is the first name. And then therefore, and by the way, you can make it so it's more, you can make this a string here as well. If you really want to, you could say that contact first name says hello. So you're testing to see that this is exactly what's happening, right? You can test that exactly. And if you run this test now, so test, run, you're going to see that it should pass. And we're good to go. All right, so that's test-driven development in a nutshell. We've tested a few things. We've made a method called says hello, and we did it the other way around. We have a requirement to have a method that returns the appropriate string, and then we make the method to match the requirement. So we have the test first, and the method comes from the test. We don't have a method first and then make a test. It's kind of counterintuitive a little bit, but it's very accurate, right, in terms of the type of thing that we can do. So you can test equal or not equal. You can test if it's greater than or less than. You can do lots and lots of options here. And I think it's a great way if you want to be super accurate and you have in a larger institution, it works great where you need to be, mistakes cost money. Actually, mistakes cost money anyway, but where speed is not as important as accuracy. All right. When speed is really important, especially when you're doing prototyping, test-driven development might be something that you may not use the same way. You could use test-driven development the other way around, where you make or you can use unit tests instead of using test-driven development for unit tests. You could make your methods first, and then make a test to make sure that the method always passes. So that way, if you make changes to your class, then you can always run your test to make sure that something didn't break. And it's another great way of debugging, using a test project to debug with. That's a different thing altogether than test-driven development. Okay. All right, so questions around test-driven development. And you're going to ask me, Professor, is this going to be on our test next week? And the answer is going to be no, it's not going to be on your test. This is great information for you. It's an intro. And I want you guys to know about this because later on in this program, you're going to have to do unit tests for your projects that you're going to run. And I want you to have seen unit tests because this is part of the requirements of this class. Any questions around this? Any questions around unit tests? If you have a question, put up your hand. If you don't have a question, we're going to stop recording now, and then I'll go to other questions that are not related to what we talked about today. I'm going to put this up on GitHub while you're maybe deciding to ask a question. I'm going to go home. I'm going to go to changes. I'm going to say created unit tests for the contact class. Okay, commit all, home, sync, and push. All right, that's pretty good. We've done a unit test, and I'm going to stop recording now. Guys, again, for those people who are watching, remember that next week there'll be no formal lectures. We're just going to have office hours on Monday and Wednesday during the appropriate times we get together. And so I'll see you guys then for people who decide to show up. Otherwise, I'll release my exam or the final test on early next week, Monday, Tuesday, and you'll have all the way until Friday to get it done. Okay, guys? Thank you so much. And for those people who are watching the feed, I'll see you guys on Monday. For those people that are here, I'll stick around to answer any questions you might have.